My family ignored me my whole life. But when my sister owed $40,000 to dangerous people, they demanded I pay. They tried to rob me and threaten me legally, so I destroyed them all with cease and desist letters, and they never saw coming what it would cost them. I'm 30 years old, I work in tech as a software engineer, and basically my whole life, I've been the invisible son, while my younger sister Emma has been the family's golden princess. But what happened 6 months ago was the last straw that made me cut contact with all of them. And when I say all of them, I mean all of them. My parents, my sister, aunts, uncles, cousins, literally the entire family. People ask me if I regret it, and honestly, I don't. Not at all. Although there were moments when the guilt almost killed me. I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand why I got to this point. I grew up in a middle-class family, nothing special. My dad worked at a logistics company and my mom was a teacher. You know, normal people with normal lives. Emma was born when I was 5, and from that moment, everything changed. It's not that my parents were bad to me before, but when she arrived, it was like I stopped existing. Everything revolved around Emma. Emma, this. Emma, that. Look what Emma did. How smart Emma is. I could get straight A's on all my exams and maybe I'd get a good job, or that's fine, but Emma got a C and it was like she'd discovered the cure for cancer. My parents would throw a party and take her out to dinner at her favorite restaurant. Looking back, I think I learned to be invisible very young. I became that kid who didn't cause problems, who did everything right, who helped around the house without being asked, thinking that maybe that way my parents would see me. But it never worked, because Emma always needed something. There was always some drama with her that required all the attention. I remember when I was like 12 years old, I won a state math competition, something that was pretty important. And on the day of the ceremony, Emma had a fight with a friend at school. Nothing serious, just teenage drama. But my parents decided to stay home with her to comfort her instead of going to my award ceremony. My aunt went, with me, the only person from my family who was there, and to this day I haven't forgotten it. The thing is, I grew up with this. Like, it was my normal reality. I didn't know families could be different until I started going to friends' houses and saw how they treated everyone equally. But anyway, I kept going. I focused on school, on getting out of there as fast as possible. I graduated high school at 17 with excellent grades, got a full scholarship to college, and basically became independent at 18. My parents didn't object. In fact, I don't think they even cared much. They were too busy worrying about Emma, who at that time was 13 and already showing signs of being a pretty problematic person. During college, I worked part-time and studied software engineering. It was tough. Honestly, there were nights when I slept like 3 hours because I had to turn in projects and also cover my work shifts, but I made it. I graduated with honors at 22, got an amazing job at a tech company, and started building my life. At that time, Emma was in college. Well, supposedly, because honestly, she spent more time at parties than in classes. My parents paid for everything: rent, food, tuition, books, and still she constantly needed more money. I watched this from afar and didn't say anything. I had already accepted my role in the family. Years went by, and I kept growing professionally. I moved to a better apartment, bought a new car, basically had a stable and comfortable life. Emma, on the other hand, changed majors like 3 times, never finished any of them, and eventually dropped out of college completely. My parents were disappointed but kept supporting her financially. They got her an apartment, paid her bills, gave her money for expenses. I occasionally went to family dinners where I'd hear my mother complain that Emma couldn't find her path, that she needed support, that life was hard for her. They never mentioned that I had supported myself since I was 18, that I never asked them for a dime, that I built my life completely on my own. It was like, that didn't count because it was expected of me. But Emma needed understanding because she was more sensitive or something like that. The relationship with my sister was practically non-existent. We'd see each other at family gatherings, exchange superficial greetings, and that was it. She never showed interest in my life, and I frankly didn't in hers either. The only person in my family I maintained real contact with was my aunt, my mother's sister, who had always been good to me and was the only one who seemed to see the toxic dynamic of my family. She'd tell me things like, "It's not your fault. Your parents are blind. You've done everything right. and that helped me maintain my sanity. Fast forward to 6 months ago. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was in my office finishing an important project when my phone started ringing. It was my mother, which was weird because she almost never called me, maybe once every 2 or 3 months for birthdays or Christmas. I answered and immediately knew something was wrong from her tone of voice. She said, "Daniel, I need you to come home now. It's about Emma. It's urgent." I asked her what was wrong and she just kept saying, "Come home. I can't explain it over the phone. We need to talk in person." I finished my workday and went to my parents' house thinking maybe Emma had been in an accident or something serious. I arrived and found my parents in the living room with serious faces. Emma wasn't there. My father, who usually never says anything and lets my mother handle everything, was also present, which told me it was something really serious. I sat down and my mother started talking. She told me that Emma had financial problems, that she had accumulated debts, that they were like $40,000 or something like that. I sat there processing this and thinking, well, it's a big amount, but she can get a job and pay them off. Over time, right? But then my mother continued and said they weren't normal debts, that Emma owed money to dangerous people, that they had been threatening her, that they needed the money now or things were going to get really bad. I was confused. Like, how did Emma end up owing $40,000 to dangerous people? My mother explained that Emma had been gambling online, that at first she was winning and thought it was easy, that then she started losing and kept gambling thinking she'd get the money back, and ended up borrowing from people you shouldn't borrow from. I was stunned. I literally couldn't believe what I was hearing. And then came the part that left me frozen. My mother looked at me directly and said, "We need you to pay Emma's debt. You have the money. We know you have savings. She's your sister and she's in danger." I sat there unable to speak for a moment. Were they serious? They wanted me to pay $40,000 in debts that Emma accumulated from gambling? I told them no, absolutely not, that this was a huge amount of money that had taken me years to save, that Emma was an adult and had to face the consequences of her actions. My mother started crying and saying that I was selfish, that how could I leave my sister in danger, that family supports each other, that they didn't have that money but I did. My father, who never says anything, finally spoke and said, "Daniel, your mother is right. Your sister needs you. You can't turn your back on her." The conversation got more and more intense. I explained to them that it wasn't my responsibility, that I had worked hard for my money, that Emma had made terrible decisions and had to learn from them. My mother yelled at me that I was a bad brother, that I was cold and heartless, that what kind of person leaves their family in trouble. Eventually I left without giving in, but with a horrible knot in my stomach. On the way home, I was thinking, am I really bad for not paying this? Am I being selfish? But at the same time, I knew that $40,000 wasn't something I could just give away, especially for someone else's bad decisions. During the following days, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. My mother called me several times a day, sent me text messages saying that Emma was receiving threats, that these guys knew where she lived, that she was scared. Then other family members started calling. Cousins I barely saw, uncles who had never cared about me, all telling me I had to help Emma, that it was my obligation as an older brother. Some told me I was successful and had money, so it wouldn't cost me anything. Others told me that if something happened to Emma, it would be my fault. The pressure was incredible, I felt like everyone was against me. A week after that meeting, I got a call from my bank. They told me there had been an unauthorized access attempt to my account, that someone had tried to transfer money, but the system blocked it because it detected suspicious activity. They asked me if I had authorized any large transfers recently, and obviously I said no. The bank told me they were going to investigate, and that in the meantime, I should change all my passwords and put additional security alerts on my accounts. I immediately knew who it had been. Emma. I went straight to Emma's apartment. I was so furious I was literally shaking. I knocked on the door and she opened it. She looked terrible, with dark circles under her eyes. The apartment was a mess. I asked her directly if she had tried to steal from my bank account, and she first denied it. Then when I insisted, she finally admitted that yes. She told me she was desperate, that these guys were pressuring her, that she didn't know what to do. I yelled at her that that was a crime, that she had tried to steal from me. How dare she? And then she told me something that left me completely devastated. She told me that Mom and Dad had suggested she try it, that they had given her some of my information, that they told her I had a lot of money and wouldn't miss it. I couldn't believe it. My own parents had participated in an attempted theft against me. I left there without saying anything else, went to my apartment, and sat there in shock. All these emotions invaded me: rage, betrayal, sadness, confusion. How did we get to this point? How could my parents value my life and my work so little that they literally encouraged stealing from me to save Emma? The next day, my parents showed up at my apartment without warning. I don't know how they got up, but someone opened the building door for them. They knocked insistently until I opened. They came in without asking, and my mother started immediately. She told me that Emma had told her that I had gone to yell at her, that I had threatened her, that I was being cruel to her when she needed me most. I told her that Emma had tried to steal from me, that they had participated in that, and my mother denied it, said they had only given her advice, that Emma had misunderstood, that I was exaggerating. The argument was brutal. My father told me that if I didn't help Emma, they were going to disinherit me, that they were going to take me out of the will, that I wasn't going to get anything from them. I laughed. I literally laughed in his face and told them I had never expected anything from them, that they hadn't given me anything in 12 years, that they could keep their inheritance for Emma if they loved her so much. My mother started crying, saying I was destroying the family. How could I be so insensitive? I told them to leave my apartment and never come back, that I was sick of their favoritism, of being treated like I didn't matter, of them only looking for me when they needed something from me. 2 days later, I received a letter from a lawyer my parents had hired. The letter said I had a moral and possibly legal obligation to help my sister in her time of need, that they were considering suing me for family negligence or something like that. I read it and couldn't believe they would go that far. I called my aunt, the only sane person in my family, and told her everything. She was horrified, told me my parents had completely lost their minds, that she had heard rumors that Emma was in trouble, but didn't know it was so serious or that they were pressuring me like this. I made a decision. I blocked my parents' numbers, Emma's, and all the family members who had been harassing me. I sent a group message before blocking them saying I didn't want to hear from any of them, that my relationship with them was over, not to look for me, not to call me, not to show up at my house. Some responded with insults, others with pleas, but I blocked them all. My aunt was the only one who supported my decision and told me she'd be there if I needed her. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. During the following weeks, they kept finding ways to contact me. They used unknown numbers, sent me letters to my apartment. Some cousins showed up at my work asking for me. I just ignored everything. But then something happened that made me take more serious measures. My mother showed up at my office, got past reception saying she was my mom and it was an emergency, made it to my work area and started making a scene in front of all my coworkers. She was yelling that I was a bad son, that I had abandoned my sister, that I was a monster. Security had to escort her out of the building while she kept screaming. It was humiliating. All my colleagues were looking at me. My boss had to intervene. It was horrible. That same afternoon, I hired a lawyer. I explained the whole situation to him, and he told me that what my family was doing was harassment, that I had legal grounds to act against them. We drafted cease and desist letters for my parents, Emma, and all the family members who had been contacting me. The letters basically said that if they continued trying to contact me in any way, I would take legal action against them for harassment. My lawyer sent them certified, and with that, they finally stopped. The silence afterwards was weird. On one hand, I felt relief. I no longer had to deal with constant calls, aggressive messages, people showing up where they shouldn't. But on the other hand, I felt empty. Like, I had just cut contact with my entire family, with people I'd known since I was born. I constantly wondered if I had done the right thing, if I was as bad as they said, if I really should have paid that debt to keep the peace. The guilt ate me alive some nights. I'm not going to lie, there were moments when I almost picked up the phone to call my mother and tell her it was okay, that I'd pay everything. But then I remembered everything that had happened. I remembered years of being ignored, of being the invisible son, of working so hard only to not receive even basic recognition. I remembered that my parents had literally helped Emma try to steal from me. I remembered the scene at my work, the lawyer's letter threatening me, all the horrible things they had said to me. And then I knew I had made the right decision, that cutting contact was the only way to protect myself. Months passed, and my life started to improve significantly. Without the constant stress of dealing with family drama, I felt lighter, freer. At work, I was promoted to team lead with a considerable raise. I started going out more with friends, met someone special, and we started a relationship. My aunt kept me updated on what was happening with my family without me asking. She told me that Emma eventually had to declare bankruptcy, that she lost her apartment and had to move back in with my parents. Apparently, the guy she owed left her alone after it became clear she had no way to pay. I don't know exactly what arrangement she made, but apparently they weren't threatening her anymore. My aunt also told me that my parents were telling their version of the story to anyone who would listen, that I was the villain who had abandoned his sister in her darkest moment, that I was a terrible son who had become greedy and selfish. Some family members believed them, others who knew the whole story had distanced themselves from them. Honestly, I didn't care what they thought or said. I had found peace in my decision, and that's what mattered. 2 weeks ago, my aunt called to tell me that Emma had finally gotten a job, something basic in retail, but at least it was something. She said my parents were having financial problems because they had spent a lot of their savings trying to help Emma during all this time, and now they were worried about their retirement. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction about that, like a kind of karmic justice, but honestly, I just felt indifference. They no longer provoked any strong emotion in me, not anger or sadness or anything. They were simply people I no longer had a connection with. Last week, I was at a coffee shop near my apartment. When I saw Emma, she didn't see me. She was focused on her phone, waiting for her order. She looked different, thinner, with shorter hair. She looked tired. I had the opportunity to leave before she saw me, but I stood there watching her for a moment. I tried to feel something, nostalgia, sadness, concern, but I felt nothing. It was like seeing a stranger. Eventually, I left before she looked up, and that was it. Now I'm at a point where I'm genuinely okay with my decision. I don't miss the awkward family dinners where they ignored me. I don't miss my mother's calls complaining about Emma. I don't miss being the backup son who only mattered when they needed something. I've built my own family, so to speak, with close friends who really care about me, with my partner who supports me, with my aunt who's always been there. That's enough for me. Sometimes, people who know my story ask me if I'll ever forgive my parents or reconcile with Emma. The honest answer is, I don't know. I don't. Completely rule out the possibility that at some point, maybe years in the future, if they really change and acknowledge all the damage they caused, there could be some kind of conversation. But it would be on my terms, with very clear boundaries, and only if I see real evidence of genuine change. I'm not going back to that toxic dynamic where I'm the invisible son, who only matters when they can use my money. What I do know is I don't regret saying no. $40,000 was my financial security. It was years of hard work. It was my future. It wasn't my responsibility to clean up the mess Emma created with her impulsive and self-destructive decisions. It wasn't my job to save someone who never showed interest in my life or well-being. And it definitely wasn't my obligation to submit to emotional manipulation, attempted theft and harassment just to keep a family happy that never valued me. I've learned that family doesn't always mean blood. Sometimes it means the people you choose, the ones who are there for you without conditions, who celebrate your successes instead of ignoring them, who don't just show up when they need something from you. And that's okay. Not everyone has a healthy family of origin, and that doesn't make you less valid or less worthy of love and respect. So yes, I cut contact with my entire family 6 months ago for refusing to pay $40,000 of my sister's gambling debts. And no, I don't regret it. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life, but also one of the most liberating. For the first time in 30 years, I feel like my life is mine. That I'm not living in Emma's shadow. That I'm not waiting for crumbs of attention from my parents. And that feeling of freedom is priceless.